Morning, if it's morning for you, but morning, I got my coffee. I hope you've had yours. Week 40 of me connecting with people I find interesting, and I've done that this week. But this week, I get to talk to a coffee professional. That's what he was called in the Roast magazine article I just read about him, an actual coffee professional, somebody that just drinks a lot. And I mean, he probably does that too, but an actual industry coffee professional. How cool is that? Let's go find out about his journey, coffee, and things I didn't know about. This is Jason. Now,
Right.
we met running, which seems to be how I meet a lot of people now. But
Yeah.
there's some things that we like that are the same, and I'm not just talking the running, because I'm not sure I'm into running. But one of them is coffee.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you have. You play a role in the coffee industry. Tell me about
Yeah.
that.
So I currently import green beans very simply, but beyond that work with everyone from coffee farmers on one end of the scale to coffee roasters here in Australia on the other, and kind of make everything in between happen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot about coffee, and talk about green beans. Is that how they're grown? Are they picked as green beans?
So a coffee tree grows cherries,
Okay.
and the beans that we use to make coffee here in Australia are actually the dried seed.
Okay.
So coffee's a fruit, very similar to a cherry, but with very little fruit on it.
Yep.
And then there's a huge amount of process between that cherry and a green bean, which is the product we import, that then people here in Australia, well, all over the world roast.
Okay.
So essentially it's a dried seed.
Yep. And is the process the same a lot of the time? Like it changes, does it?
Everywhere is different in terms of how they go from a cherry to a seed.
Yep.
Is hugely different. Very similar all around the world, but there's a number of ways you can get there, and they all produce different results in flavor. But the places we work with are very different. So every country has a different dynamic, whether it's a supply chain or political or, working within the law or just the size of farmers.
Yep.
Every situation is completely unique.
What would have the most influence on? I mean, coffee
On
tastes
flavor?
different. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the cherry or is it the roasting that has the most?
I always describe it as a chain, right? So every single link in that chain has equally as important a part.
Yep.
So the variety of coffee. So coffee's just not just coffee. There's so many different varieties of coffee. Like with apples, every
Okay.
different apple always a different flavor. That would be the first thing. Then where it's grown, so the soil conditions, the climate, the altitude, the number of days of rain and sun, and
Yep.
everything in between. Then the process from there to a green bean, and obviously how it's roasted. So, and even how it's made. So I guess when you're drinking coffee, to an uneducated palate, the first thing you're probably tasting is the roasting.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a huge impact. A very dark roast can be intense and bitter, and a very light roast like this can be aromatic and tea-like. So that's probably what most people notice first. And then I guess as you delve into it and ask questions, it's
Yep.
kind of reveals itself.
You seem to know a lot about the whole process, because you work in just one sector of it. I guess you've worked in other sectors.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been in coffee professionally. Take out school and university and weekends for about 23 years now.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've kind of worked across every aspect. I've owned cafes. I've owned and managed roasteries, from like little boutique micro roasteries to very large, quite industrial sized things, and kind of everywhere in between. So
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
don't know if that's because I've got itchy feet, or if I just find the whole thing fascinating.
And it's a diverse industry.
It's a diverse industry. Every person you deal with in the industry is different. So
Yep.
why not explore it?
What's one of the roles or jobs you've had in the past that was your favorite?
I worked in a role doing on the ground upstream development. So I worked quite a bit in Timor,
Mm-hmm.
working with farmers, helping them to get what they deliver to us to a higher quality.
Yep.
Now that's probably been my absolute favorite role, because you see such a big immediate impact
Yep.
with what you're doing.
How much of the coffee that we drink in Australia comes from Australia versus overseas?
Very little.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very little.
And why is that? We
Climate's huge.
Okay.
So coffee ideally wants to be between 18 and 24 degrees all year round.
Okay.
Very few places in Australia that can accommodate that.
Yep.
And also the cost of labor, like when you're paying someone, what's the minimum wage now? 20 something dollars an hour to produce an affordable product. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
There are a couple of places we grow coffee. Northern New South Wales got like a weird little microclimate where they don't get too much frost, but it doesn't get too hot.
Okay.
So there's a few small growers there, and then up in North Queensland, so like Atherton, Tablelands, Mareeba.
Yep.
There's some bigger plantations. It is a certain quality, and the price doesn't necessarily match it.
Yeah,
because
gotcha.
you can sell any quality. I can sell absolute trash that tastes awful, but at the right price, that's appealing to someone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess there's a lot of coffee up there, and maybe as things change, climate changes, cost of transport has gone up through the roof the last 2-3 years.
I guess the only way to get it from North Queensland is by truck.
Yeah, but that's a lot cheaper than by ship from Brazil, right?
True.
So that might change the way the price value proposition. Who knows?
Yeah. So, who do you sell to? Are you selling direct to coffee? Like, do you sell all of it to roasters?
Yeah, so
or-
all my coffee's to coffee roasters.
Okay.
I mean, the company I work for, we've got a very small amount of like direct to consumer retail. A lot of people like roasting as a hobby,
Okay.
but like in the grand scheme of what we do, that's tiny.
Yep.
We might sell 100 kilos in a month to a home roaster, like through all the home roasting network. And, my wholesale sales are tens of thousands of tons.
And so, that's a lot, like you're bringing them in on ships, is that?
Yeah,
And-
like container loads.
Like a delivery to you guys is in the tons?
20 tons.
Right.
So 20 tons is one container of coffee, 20 tons.
Okay.
We don't really bring in much smaller than that.
Okay.
Occasionally you might have, if it's a very expensive coffee and you don't have a home for all of it, because you're paying the same freight for the whole container, whether it's full or not.
Yep.
We might bring in, 16, 18, but very, very rarely.
And do you guys then have to dice it up? I guess you're not dicing it up. Portion it up?
We use like third-party logistics for all that stuff. So I don't do any heavy lifting with coffee anymore. If you worked out the number of coffee comes in a 60 kilo sack.
Okay.
So if I work out the number of sacks I've physically carried over the years,
Yep.
I should be a lot more muscly than this.
And so they come in this big thing, they get portioned up and off they go. How does it arrive it arrives in a sack to the roaster?
Yeah, so our roasters would get a pallet, 16
okay.
sacks, a ton of coffee. Sometimes, depending on their size, might just be, some of our customers they would look for a container of coffee, they would contract it. So they'd say, we need 20 ton of coffee over 6 months. Some of the smaller ones would be like, can we just get a mixed pallet, which is a ton, and we need 5 or 6 different coffees on it. Yeah, kind of. I've got a very diverse portfolio of customers.
Yeah, wow, awesome.
Which is good.
Now we met running. How long have you been running for?
5 years.
Okay. What got you into running?
So I've always, prior to running, I've always been quite overweight. And COVID hit. I was working from home pre-COVID. COVID hit, and then I'm stuck at home. 2 teenage kids that I was trying to teach because that was our responsibility.
Yep.
And it was just a way to get out of the house, to be honest. So I'd, take the dog for a walk at lunchtime, and then I was like, well, maybe I can run to that lamppost. Maybe I can run to that tree over there.
Yep. And off you go.
And now you know what it's like, right?
It just sucks you in. And I'm pretty sure, according to your Facebook, you and I are doing the same event this year, which is Sydney.
Yes.
So from running to the lamppost to you're going to do a marathon in Sydney?
Yeah, it'll be my 6th.
Sydney will be my 6th marathon. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy marathons?
I'm not sure. Just like this. I enjoy the training.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy running them. The thought of running a marathon in 6 months' time is a little daunting every time.
Yeah. What's your favorite distance?
Yeah, definitely the marathon.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I think
like the challenge.
I like the challenge. I like the headspace. I like how it's a lot more mental for me personally to run a marathon than to run a 5 or 10K.
Yeah, awesome. On one of our long chats, I got to chat to you a little bit, and you had a bit of a flooding issue at home.
Yeah.
A little while ago. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we woke up one morning, 3 a.m. with the neighbor banging on the door, and had waist deep water in the house.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was an experience I don't wish on people.
No, I bet. So had to do a full reno.
Yeah, literally finished
Yep.
a month ago. So it took us 10 months.
And I think I remember you telling me during the run that you lost your car, you lost everything, like the
Everything, yeah.
cars, everything.
Yeah.
And what was the cars at the time? One of them was a fun toy car,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, I've in my younger years, I've always enjoyed cars, motorsport, nothing serious, just having a bit of fun.
Yep.
And then I don't know if you're the same, but like you get to that point where you decide to focus on yourself. Running's one of those things I did. And then as you do that, my kids, they're at that age, they like need you less and less as they get older. And you go, what do I actually your role as a parent maybe or as a person transitions out of I have young kids that I've got to do everything for. And I feel you kind of have to reinvent yourself or at least search back to what you enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, one of those things that
Cars
came
for
up
it.
and yeah,
Yep.
I don't need to truck kids around. They're starting to drive themselves. Why not have a bit of fun?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's the daily driver now?
So now I've got a BMW 3 Series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a bit of fun.
I saw on your Facebook you're not born from around here. In fact, you're
No.
born on probably the other side of the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. About halfway around the world.
Yeah. Where are you from?
So I was born in South Africa.
Okay.
Like many people in this part of the world, I guess. Yeah.
And how long? How did you go from South Africa to end up sitting in
So
Queensland chatting to me?
yeah, my family moved out in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s.
How old were you?
14.
Oh wow.
maybe.
Okay.
Yep. I was 14 when we moved. Couldn't afford to come to Australia at the time. Obviously, they needed very different things in Australia. My mum was a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
weren't valued very highly. We were kind of stuck in this weird situation where the government was trying to prohibit people from leaving. And then there's an interesting, which I won't go into too much depth. There's a very interesting situation where both my parents they were very anti-apartheid. So it was obviously during apartheid, they were kind of on, I wouldn't say on watch lists, but what they were doing was being watched by the government.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't take money out of the country. So we did a few sneaky things to at least be able to leave, but we landed up in New Zealand, couldn't afford to come to Australia. And then, yeah, 10, 11 years later, I just got sick of the cold. We grew up in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, not far from Jeffreys Bay, which a lot of people know for surfing.
Okay.
Beaches, warm climate, moved to Auckland, rains 365 days a year, very different. And yeah, just one thing led to another, and I came over here in my
Right.
early 20s,
Okay. Where are your parents now?
still in New Zealand.
And do they enjoy it?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's where they live, I
Yep.
guess. I guess at their age, one move is huge.
Yeah.
Like stressful, financially costly, emotional. I don't know if they would. Their plan was to use New Zealand as the bridge to come
Yep.
to Australia, and I think it just got too much
Yep. Have you ever been back to South Africa?
once.
Okay.
Yeah.
For work or
No,
pleasure?
just for
check
a
it
whole
out?
yeah. Just in those early days after we had just moved across, we did a few trips back to sort of try and bring more money out.
Yep.
So my dad had a business with I think 17 offices or something, and
Right.
had a bit of money in the bank and a fair bit of assets, and they couldn't take anything. So we used to do trips back to South Africa, fill up a suitcase full of money, that kind of thing. So we did that a few times in the early days, and then they just like whatever's
Yeah.
left is left. It's too risky to go back. Since then, I haven't been back. I haven't been back as an adult.
Yeah.
But I would love to. It's a huge expanse with a family and halfway around the world.
Yeah. And you get to, but I mean, not back to there, but you get to see some other countries. I've seen Facebook's got.
Yeah,
you've
travel
been to
quite
a
a bit
few-
with work.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice.
And
I
it's
mean,
mostly work that's allowed you to travel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it is it's not the one advantage. It's one of the great advantages of what I do is that we spend a bit of time traveling to places.
Yeah.
Most coffee comes from pretty cool countries that people don't visit all the time. So
What's your apart from here? What's your favorite part of the world?
to travel,
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of countries. Everywhere's different, right? So
Yep.
I think you can find great things to do in most parts of the world. I definitely prefer going to less developed countries. I quite enjoy. I love going back to Africa whenever I get the chance. It's just a great place. I feel maybe the first world's gone a bit interesting.
Yep.
And sometimes you just need a bit of a perspective or reality check.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and I've traveled some very remote places. Like when I go overseas, I'm not in a big city.
Yep.
You're typically out in the countryside, talking with farmers, up in the mountains somewhere. I've spent, like I said, a lot of time in Timor, literally the middle of nowhere, and it's 3 hours away.
Yep. And what does the future hold for you?
I have no idea.
Right.
I'm definitely a go with the flow kind of guy.
Yep.
I think it's nice to have, I know my view, getting super philosophical. Nice to have big plans, know what you want to do in life. But I think if you get super focused on how you're going to do it, you potentially miss a lot of fun opportunities or interesting opportunities that arise. So yeah, I'm pretty flexible. I don't see myself not being in coffee for a long time, but whether it's what I'm doing currently or something else pops up, who knows? You never know where things lead.
So I read an article not long ago, and I know this from talking to you as well, but I
Mm,
read an article not long ago about coffee prices.
yeah.
What's going on there?
Yeah. So coffee, I mean, coffee is bought and sold on the commodity exchange, like gold or oil or whatever, supply and demand. Brazil's the largest grower of coffee in the world. And essentially what happens in Brazil pretty much dictates where prices go. Brazil's now, the harvest we had last year was their fourth harvest in deficit, which means they've got less coffee than they have demand for.
Right.
And so essentially that's all it is. There's more people want to buy coffee than there is coffee to buy.
Yep.
And prices are high.
Yeah. Wow.
And everything else is high. So our shipping cost in the last 2 years gone up 300%. The cost of doing business has gone up, finance and interest rates and the great Australian peso that we're currently dealing with.
Yep.
Just, yeah, all puts
And
coffee prices up.
so I guess for a consumer at the coffee shop, at some point, we're not going to see these little adjustments to price. We're actually going to see some, big jumps in coffee price soon. 'Cause
Yeah, I
with
mean,
wages going up, rent going up, now the actual bean price.
the coffee cup price is actually a very interesting discussion, right? So coffee beans have probably gone up for roasters 100% in the last 2 years.
Yep.
But in terms of a cup price, it's not a huge increase. Like in a cup of coffee, the cost of the physical coffee's very low, maybe 60 to 80 cents.
Yep.
So when you're talking that price having doubled over the last 2 years, it's probably gone from 50 cents to 80 cents, let's say, because the raw ingredient cost isn't it's not doubling the end price.
Yep.
So we maybe gone from 60 to 80 cents. One of the real shames with cafes is what we call GST farms. Everything a cafe purchases is GST free. Everything they sell includes GST. So first up, let's say you're paying $4 for a coffee. 40 cents of that's GST. You nothing, a little bit of electricity or, paper cups, minor things to offset it, but you're essentially generating GST out of nowhere.
Yep.
10% is GST. So your $4 cup of coffee, 40 cents is GST. 80 cents is the beans, maybe 20 cents in packaging. And, if you look at what wages are doing, if you're open on a Sunday, you're paying a 16-year-old $35 an hour.
Yep. And I've always looked, commercial real estate background. I always look at the rental side of it. It's high rents for something that has a very narrow a window for bringing in the revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, outside the hours of sort of 6 in the morning to lunchtime, no one's drinking a lot of coffee in this country.
Yeah. And I guess to put a couple of things in perspective, right? So when I opened my first cafe in 2005, we sold a small dine-in coffee for $3.20.
Yep.
You can still find that coffee for $4.
Yep.
That's not a huge increase in 20 years,
Yep.
22 years. Secondly, the number of cafes open is huge. So there's such an oversaturation. When I was in roasting and wholesale, we would have coffee customers in the city, multiple, doing 80 to 100 kilos a week. Now that's over 500 or 600 cups of coffee a day. So if you're making a tiny margin, but you're selling a lot of cups of coffee, it's fine.
Yep.
Now you may see one of those, two of those. Realistically, the average cafe is probably a 20 to 25 kilo. So not only is there higher costs, but there's so much more competition.
And so the volume's not there for them.
The number of cups being sold a day might have doubled, but the number of cafes gone up tenfold.
Yeah.
I don't know. This could be a market correction
Yep.
that we're seeing. But also look at beer.
Yep.
20 years ago you could get a pint for $5. Now no one bats an eyelid at a $10 schooner.
Yep.
But people
Absolutely.
are blowing up about potentially paying $6 for a coffee.
So we're both doing Sydney.
Yes.
Is it going to be a PB for you? Are you aiming to?
You're probably similar. We're all runners.
Yep.
You never go out expecting it. You always go out hoping it.
Are you going to train for a PB?
Absolutely.
All right.
Always got to train for a PB.
What's your PB for a marathon?
3:29.
Oh, wow. You and I are not running together.
What's your PB?
Oh, 3:45.
That's close.
And then I did Gold Coast one year and I did 3:45 because that's what I had in my mind to do. And I fought that voice in my head to do it. I went back the next year, having said I was never going to do another one, went back the next year to run slower to try and enjoy it more. That did not work.
Yep.
And I was done. I was never doing another marathon. Yeah. And then they made Sydney a major. So I figured, I got to.
Can't turn it down.
Got to. So.
Yeah, but you're running fast now.
Short distance.
Yeah, that all counts. I mean, I went out to run a sub 3:30 marathon super ambitiously for my first marathon.
Yep.
When I made that call, I don't know if I'd run a sub 1:40 half yet.
Yeah, okay.
But that was my goal. Got to be ambitious. I'm like, rather aim high and, I don't want to be conservative and work my ass off to get an average, not that any time's average, but within yourselves what you're capable of. And you go, well, a little more than that would be great. So I set out at a 3:30 pace. First marathon, hit the wall at about 28 Ks, came home 3:38.
Yep.
Second one, exact same strategy, hit the wall at 36 Ks, came home 3:32.
Yep.
Next one, just all came together.
Yeah, wow.
So that's, I don't know, now I've got to readjust.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Thank you very much for chatting to me today.
No problem.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
There's a coffee that's in the world.
I know exactly what you're going to ask me.
That is poop. Some animals' poop is coffee, right? How does that work?
So in the civet cat, they have
Sorry, that's an animal?
Animal, yeah.
Okay.
So it's like kind of like a weasel.
Right.
In Indonesia,
okay.
Funny enough. And in its digestive tract, it has this, enzyme.
Yep.
That creates a very unique fermentation.
So it eats the cherry.
It eats the cherry.
Yep. Whole.
Okay. Poops it out.
Yep.
And while it's digested it, the intestinal enzyme has fermented it in a specific way.
Right. And somebody thought, let's roast that?
Not going to speculate on how that started.
Let's see what this looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then it kind of was a bit of a novelty thing for a long time. And then, I don't know, something happened. I don't know what. It became popular like 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Definitely when I started in coffee, it was like have you ever tried it? And it was expensive. It was like, places were selling it for $100 a cup. And I've tried it and I've bought it and it's fine.
Have we started feeding cherries to other animals to see what they're like?
Actually, yes.
Right.
So two things happened. Firstly, what happened is they started battery farms. Right. So then it sort of instantly lost popularity. And then the second thing that happened is they started going, what other things eat these cherries in the wild? And then you go through. But it was very much novelty.
Yeah.
I think if you ever come across it, try it.
Yep. What's it called?
Kopi luwak.
Right.
So kopi is just coffee. Indonesian, luwak's the type of animal.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're traveling, if you're ever in Bali, which most Australians are at some point in their life, you can get it a lot of places. It's an experience. You don't turn down experiences, right?
No.
I've
drunk worse.
I've eaten and drunk worse. Exactly right. Exactly right.
I started life as an espresso drinker.
I think we've actually met.
Right.
Like 12 years ago.
Okay.
I was thinking about it. Ever since you posted a photo of yourself or a video when you were bigger.
Yep.
I'm like, I swear we've met. Caboolture, the cafe there.
Not Evolution.
Not Evolution. Older. The guy, Justin Bold, was the owner.
Ha! Double brass.
Yes.
Double
Yeah?
brass.
You went there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
It was called double brass.
Yeah,
So,
they're
so were you?
I supplied them, so that's back when I was roasting coffee.
Right. Thank you. That's awesome. Cheers.